Larry, back in 2018, you have launched this impressive initiative to promote new thinking and a new paradigm. Has there been a triggering moment for you?
Yeah, well, the triggering moment was the 2016 election. So the 2016 election was something we anticipated, something like that when we had started our democracy work back in 2012, 2013. But the time frame that we thought, something like the election of straight up election of a demagogue, that wouldn't happen, that was 20, 30 years away, and it happened in 4 years. And so it made us step back and say, our diagnosis was right, but this happened so much faster than we expected. What had we missed? And we zeroed in on two things. One was we missed the full significance of social media and the extent to which that disrupted, ordinary political understanding. And we missed the extent to which there had been a breakdown in the overarching ideas set within which left-right disagreement had been structured for the past 30 years. And those two factors made us realize, you need to fix those. And so we started work on both of them actually at the same time in 2017, 2018.
Yeah. When you're talking about this paradigm, it seems like something which is not usual to address for a foundation for philanthropy. It seems quite big. What do you mean by that? What is the sense? What is the essence of that?
So first, I will say it is quite usual for philanthropy to address it. The existing neoliberal paradigm was the product of a self-conscious philanthropic effort by conservative funders that launched in the 1940s and carried forward through the 1970s and 80s and still carries on today. So it may not seem usual on the left, but it has been a very important part of philanthropy on the right, which has been much more interested in ideas than the left. So one of the beefs I have with philanthropy is it is fundamentally anti-intellectual in the sense that people, at least on the left in philanthropy, do not see ideas as a form of action. They see action, they're interested in the ideas immediately adjacent to that action that help justify it, but they think it's all about building movements and political muscle and forcing through the things that they want, and don't understand that actually the ideas environment within which those proposals are situated has a powerful effect on the extent to which they get adopted and the extent to which they prove sticky. Not alone, there's many vectors that produce a political outcome, but the large ideas framework is a big part of it. Mm. So that's the understanding. And what I mean by that is the following. People have in their minds a general explanation that about the nature of society and what the society is aiming to achieve that helps explain the world to them. It's always messy, but when things are coming at them, they need a way to say, that seems right, that seems wrong. Something that seems right, they might still be persuaded out of for other reasons, political interests, culture, whatever. Things that seem wrong, they might still be persuaded to adopt for other reasons, but that explanation helps structure the initial ordering for them. And those explanations work differently for different people. So for policymakers, it's a complete economic and political philosophy that they use to generate solutions to particular problems. And for ordinary citizens, it's more like a bumper sticker, government good, markets good, government bad, or whatever. And for politicians, they sit in the middle having to take the particular solutions generated and translate them into terms that ordinary citizens can understand that reinforce the bumper sticker understanding. And you get a virtuous cycle. Within that, the paradigm itself has plenty of room for the ongoing left-right disagreements, but there'll be that fundamental structure that people share. And it works because it lines up with the world as people are experiencing it well enough. But the world is constantly changing. And the ideas themselves are changing. And at some point, the disconnect between the explanation and the world as being experienced becomes large enough that the paradigm starts to break down. Mm. When it breaks down, people will drift to the next best explanation available to them. So neoliberalism is dying. That's not the question anymore. Just as laissez-faire died in the 1930s. At that time, people drifted in different directions. Some people became communists. That was an alternative way to understand the world. Some people became fascists. In the West, in the United States and most of the West, the sort of Keynesian approach worked well enough. And we're in a similar period today where the neoliberal thing is breaking down. We're not going back to it. but people are drifting, and a lot of them are drifting towards ethno-nationalism, which the media calls populism, but is really, and that's a really bad alternative. So unless we give them something better, the future does not look very promising.
How would you describe the results of this first phase and exploration that you did and the state of the movement that you're describing?
So even in the last 3 years, it's begun to take form. So there have been people thinking about the problems with neoliberalism for quite some time, but especially since 2008. And there's a massive critique about each of its fundamental premises. And so there's a lot of arguments where, so first you start with the assumption that society consists of atomized individuals pursuing their self-interest. Okay, there's a huge critique of that has replaced it with some notion that society, we are pro-social beings, we work in and through groups, we're also individuals. Neoliberalism says the goal of a society is growth, generating wealth. Well, we now think that's actually not a very good normatively attractive goal. We need to think about a justly distributed wealth, but we don't yet have agreement on what that exactly should look like. But we have lots of competing alternatives. And then between those two things, we can come up with all sorts of new ways to think about the relationship between markets and government to harness pro-social individuals to produce a better distribution of wealth. So as I say, a lot of pieces out there, rethinking antitrust law, rethinking labor and how to empower the voice of labor as against capital, rethinking the way technology works within markets, and so roles for government to eliminate monopoly and so on. What we're missing yet is a kind of putting it together into a single coherent story that is intuitively appealing. So we're in that stage where we've got lots of pieces, but no one has yet quite put the puzzle together.
How would you define the role of philanthropy in this? What is the specific thing that you are wanting to do, what you want to do in that?
Yeah, so we're looking to do two things. We're looking to find all of the people who are thinking about these alternatives, and one, get them to work together, or at least to see themselves as part of a common intellectual movement. And two, to focus a little less on critique and more on developing the alternative agenda. And then three, on, as I say, turning it into an intuitively appealing story that can be understood by all the different actors in the ways that they need to understand it. What we have now is a hodgepodge of policies. And the problem is, as long as you have a hodgepodge of policies, they don't have staying power, right? They're still fighting an uphill battle against the residuals of the old paradigm, or worse, against something new like populism and ethno-nationalism. And so getting them into place is an uphill fight. We need to make it a downhill fight by linking them to a story that people go, right, that makes sense of the world to me. So we're trying to get the people who are the right people to do that kind of work to do it.
You've recently announced that you will extend the initiative and now have another 5-year period and $50 million spent for this. And you announced that you would like to go abroad and keep this movement also, sustain this movement abroad. What does that mean?
Yeah, so first, it's not that we expect to be done in 5 years. There is no way this is going to be done in 5 years. But the foundation makes its commitments in 5-year chunks when it does these initiatives. But when I said to the board, it was like, don't approve even the first 5 years unless you're ready to stay in this for a while. And they agreed with that. And it's not a US issue. It's not even a geographic issue. This is a way of thinking about a globally integrated economy. So it will play out differently in different countries because the local conditions in every country is different. But what we're trying to do is really generate a way of thinking about this that can be used everywhere, even as it's applied differently everywhere. And so that requires working with people in other countries and other parts of the world, both to make it saleable and acceptable there, but also because they start from different places that help inform the thinking.
Yeah. You have made clear that you want to go across the political spectrum, so you want to address people from different boards. Is that possible? Isn't it something, that new paradigm, that will address mainly one side?
So the key, so neoliberalism is not a inherently conservative paradigm. There is conservative neoliberalism and progressive neoliberalism. Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, they were progressive neoliberals. what that meant is they accepted the idea that growth was the foremost goal. They were more willing than conservatives to qualify it for some redistribution, but they accepted the primacy of growth and they accepted the primacy of markets. Government would intervene in exceptional circumstances where markets failed for some reason. So what we're talking about as with all of these paradigm shifts is not the left beats the right, then the right beats the left. It's a realignment. It's a redefinition of what it means to be left and right. And so that, that it starts out being framed because on the surface, it looks more like things the left likes, spending, and so on. But ultimately, it requires, and there is a movement within the right to put the conservative versions that abandon the libertarianism in favor of some other promoting values, promoting labor and work to strengthen communities, whatever. It doesn't look quite like left wing, but it also doesn't look like neoliberalism. And so we want, this should still be a pretty broad tent. It's a different tent than the neoliberal one, but it should still be a pretty broad one that makes room for lots of different visions and that has us then fighting within those terms that make sense for our world. So you have to, if you just turn it into, we're just going to look for people on the left to finally beat those people on the right, you're just replaying the same script we've been playing badly for the last 2 decades. Mm. Well, for us, it's like really thrilling to, again, making this global is so important. It just can't be a US thing. So it's great. And of course, the opportunities in Europe are bigger and better to move faster.